All right, Rabbosai, good morning. Let us begin. I want to begin by thanking our sponsor, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Teves, Yoel Sara Kelman, for dedicating all the Shurim and Drashos this month in honor of the birth of their daughter, Oriya Tahel, and in the schus that all of the couples davening for children will have their tefilos answered b'karov. To thank Teri Czinn for dedicating all the Shurim and Drashos this month in honor of their grandchildren, Adin, Tzvi, and Naftali, Moshe, and Shirley Elbaum and family in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Shirley's husband, Gerald Elbaum, Rabbi Yaakov Kopel, ben R Avraham Menachem. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. And Abba said, with that, let us begin. Good. Sorry. Okay. So we'll say we have a lot to do today. Beautiful daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Yud Zayin 17. And we are picking up in Yahrzeit Hashem on Tes Zayin Amud Beis, like I said. A lot to do. And we are picking up in the wide lines, 3 lines in, to the set of wide lines right below the short lines, right below the thin lines. So the Megillah says, still quoting from the Megillah, it's a beautiful pasuk at the end of the Megillah. The Jews had light, joy, I should say light, happiness, sason is translated as joy, and yikar, honor. Says the Gemara, Amar Yehuda, what does this refer to? Ora zu Torah. Ora refers to Torah. Light refers to Torah. V'chein hu omer kiner mitzvah v'Torah ar. So what that means is that the beauty of Purim was in the aftermath. Part of the celebration of Purim was a recommitment to Torah. Remember again, if you go back over here to the beginning of this narrative, the beginning of the drashos on the Megillah, if you remember again, we saw that one of the things that Haman said to Achashverosh, remember again, he said, Yeshno am echad. So remember again, what did Achashverosh say? They have Torah mitzvos. So what did Haman say? Yeshno, Yashnu. Right? They've become lax in their observance. They've become lax in their commitment. So you see that the Jews were makabel that Musar, and part of the celebration of Purim is a recommitment to Torah. So the Gemara Shamar Yehuda Ora zu Torah v'cheinu omer kiner mitzvah v'Torah ar simcha zu yamtiv. Simcha means they made into a yamtiv. V'cheinu omer v'samachta b'chagecha sason zu mila. Very interesting. What is joy? Joy is mila. Sheneb, because the pasuk says omer sas anochi alim rasecha. So yikar refers to tefillin. V'cheinu omer v'ra'u kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra eilecha v'yaru mimeka. The nations of the world will see that the name of God has been called upon you, and they will fear you. V'tanya Amar Rabbi Eliezer Agad Omer Elu Tefillin Shevarosh. This refers dafka to the head tefillin, which everyone is able to see. Shabbos said, it's very interesting. What does bris milah and tefillin have to do with the Purim story? So Rashi here says something fascinating. Rashi says zu milah va'al kol ele gazar. Rashi apparently seems to indicate that Haman also legislated against the performance of certain mitzvos, specifically the performance of tefillin and bris milah, which is fascinating because that's not alluded to anywhere in the Megillah itself, right? Remember again, Haman is not really Haman, unlike, let's say, in Antiochus, right? Antiochus, by the Hanukkah story, was much more focused on assimilation, right? So the way to accomplish assimilation is legislate against the performance of mitzvos. Haman was not interested in assimilation. Haman wasn't interested in what? In annihilation, right? Which is why, by the way, just so you understand, that's it. For example, interestingly enough, on Purim there's a mitzvah of physical simcha, because we celebrate physical salvation. Chanukah, there is no mitzvah of seudah, right? There is no mitzvah of physical celebration, because there was no physical there was a physical salvation, but that wasn't the essence of it. So the Gemara goes right there. So the Gemara says, Ve'ez Parshanda, so Aseres Bnei Haman. About a very interesting Gemara. So we'll say, remember again, we list all 10 sons of Haman. Amar of Adad min Yafo, Aseres Bnei Haman, Va'aseres, Tzarech L'Memrihu B'Neshima Achos. We'll say you have to go ahead and say the 10 names of Haman's sons, the 10 names, and Aseres Bnei Haman, that phrase, all in one breath. My timer, what's the reason for that? Kulu Bahadi Hadadi Nafkinish Masai, because they were all killed together. Right? In other words, they were all hanged at the same time. Am Rabbi Yochanan, Vav devaizasa tzarech lemimtecha bezekifa kimoradya delivros. Furthermore, the vav of vaizasa should be elongated, like literally again, should be elongated like kimorida de livros, is like the pole of the boatman of the Nahar Livros. Okay? My time, what's the reason? Kulu bechad zekifa as dekifu. Both says it's very interesting. You know, when we have this image in our mind of the sons of Haman being hanged, at least I always thought about it that, you know, you have gallows and they were all hanged together across. The Gemara seems to indicate that in fact it was a long pole and they were all hanged one below the other. That's the way it was. So therefore, again, the vav of vaizasa is elongated a little bit to highlight the longer pole. Incredible. Oriya Tahel bar Papa Davar Sham Shila Ish Kfar Tamrasa Kol Ashiros Kulos Kulan Michtavos Ariach Al Gabi Levena. So what's very interesting? Whenever you have a shira, right? A shira. Now shira is going to mean different things. When we think about shira, we think about Az Yasher, we think about Ha'azino. But interestingly enough, from the Gemara's perspective, the way when the writing of the sons of Haman in the Megillah is, or the writing that they were hanged, is also called shira. So the Gemara says, how do you write shira? Shira is written Ariach al Gabi Levena. Literally translated, it means a half a brick on top of a whole brick. Now I will say what that means is, if you look at the way shira is written, for example, in the Torah, right? You have, it's not a full line of writing across, right? You have writing, space, writing, space. And then on the next line, it's the opposite, right? So you might have space, writing, space. So that what you have is each little block of writing is essentially surrounded on both sides by space, and there's space underneath it as well. So that's called Ariach al Gabe Levena. That's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai, that's the way that shira is written. Chutz, with the exception of, the Gemara says, with the exception of chutz mishira zu, except for this shira. So as I just mentioned, what's this shira? The 10 sons of Haman. How were the 10 sons of Haman written? Remember again, they're written in 2 columns. Right now you read it across, you don't read it down, but they're written in 2 columns. So you have name, space, name, space, name, space, 5 times, right? So for 10 sons, why is that? So that's called chutz mishira zu umalche Kinaan. And interestingly enough, in Sefer Yoshua, when the Navi details at the end of Sefer Yoshua, all of the kings that Yoshua conquered, or that they conquered in Sefer Yoshua, those names are, if you were to write, we're not used to seeing Nevi'im on cloth, but if you were to see the Navi, the way that we write it on cloth would be the same way we write the sons of Haman, right? Name, space, name, space, name, space, name. What's the reason? So the Gemara says, so we call that Sha'ariach al Gabi Ariach, Ulevena al Gabi Levena. We call that a half a brick on top of a half a brick, which means writing on top of writing, and Levena al Gabi Levena, which means empty space on top of empty space. My time, what's the reason? Shalot tehei tekuma lemapalasan. That ultimately, again, it symbolically represents that the names, right, the Rishon should have a downfall, and they have no way of getting back up. Rashi says, Shalot tehei tekuma, shalo yehe lahem makom laharchiv tza'adav tachtov. Kiviyachal, like, there's no room for the Rasha to get back up. See, I will say, when the Shira is written, and there's writing, and then there's blank space, that blank space is viewed as quote unquote room for that which is above it. So if you were to write the name of Rishayim, you were to write the name and then blank space, that would represent that the Rishayim have the ability, so to speak, to get back up. By writing the name of Rishayim one on top of the other with no space in between, there's kiviyachol, no space for the Rasha to get back up. The Rasha, the evil person, the wicked person, has been fully vanquished. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says, "Vayomer Melech le'Esther Malka b'Shushan Abira hargu haYehudim." So let's remember again, the rest of that pasuk is as follows. So the king says to Esther Malka and Shushan Abira, the Jews killed chamesh me'os ish, the 10 sons of Haman, and then again he says to her, "Masha ilasech v'inaselach." What else do you want? Suppose I say, now watch this. It says, "Vayomer Melech Esther Malka." So the Gemara says, "B'Shushan Abira hargu haYehudim Amra b'Yavo." Melamed Sheba Malach v'Satra al Piv teaches us that the Malach came and literally again slapped Achashverosh in the mouth. Meaning what? That when Achashverosh began to say the Jews killed people in Shushan, he wasn't saying it in a happy way. He was saying it in an accusatory way. I will say this goes back to the narrative of Chazal, that Achashverosh was not a lover of the Jews. He never was. Haman gave him an excuse to do perhaps what he had always wanted to do. But at the end of the day, again, just because he changes his mind and ends up executing Haman, and ultimately, sides with Esther, indicates no love for the Jews. So he's about to malign the Jews, and Kiviyachal, the Malach comes, like I said in yesterday's daf, it's amazing. Megillah Esther has more angelic intervention than any other story we seem to see. It's absolutely incredible. Malachim everywhere. So the pasuk says that when Esther came before the king, Amar im hasefer. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Amar, Amra mibai. So first of all, it's talking about Esther. It should be Nikeva. It should be Amra. Furthermore, so the Gemara says, Amra Yochanan, Amra lo, Yomar bepeh, mashakasuv basefer. Esther said, let us say by mouth what is written in the Sefer. Look at Rashi. Rashi here is on the left-hand side. Ima Sefer, Shete Megillah Ksuva Lefneim B'Shas Kriya. Esther was legislating that when we read the Megillah should be written down. When we tell the story should be told Im HaSefer, with the scroll. Divrei Shalom Ve'emes, Am Rabbi Tanchum V'Amrila Am Rabbi Hasi Melamid, Shetzricha Sirtut Ke'amita Shel Torah. When you call the Megillah Divrei Shalom Ve'emes, it's comparing a Megillah to a Torah. The Torah is the paradigm or the essence of Emes, and therefore the Megillah should be written just like a Sefer Torah. How so? Just like a Sefer Torah has sirtut. I will say, if you ever look very carefully at a Torah, at a scroll, you'll notice that there are lines etched into the parchment. That sirtut is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, Sinaitic law. Just like Sefer Torah has it, so a Megillah should have it as well. Uma'amar Esther kayom. So the Gemara says, Ma'amar Esther in divrei somos lo. So the Gemara says, well, 1 second. It sounds like only the legislation of Esther regarding Purim is there, but Tainis Esther is not there. Ultimately, again, it means that for all generations, both the fast day as well as the celebration of Purim are in existence for Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara says, so the end of the Megillah here. So the Megillah says, because Mordechai the Jew was the second in command to the king Achashverosh, Gadol leYehudim, he was great for the Jews, right? Gadol leYehudim, he was made great within the Jews. Beratzeh l'rov achav, he was beloved by the majority of his brethren. Says the Gemara, l'rov achav v'lo l'chol achav. Now, I will say, I want to point something very interesting, point out something very interesting, which is as follows. Even in halakha, if we think about this, let's say in Yeridea, we have a concept of a rov and a miut. So whenever we speak about a miut, right, a minority that is incredibly insignificant, which was like a miut she'eno matzui, is not even recognized in halacha. So what this means is as follows: that when halacha, or in this case when the Megillah mentions rov tells me that what? There's a significant minority. Right? It's a minority, but it's not, in other words, don't think this is not like a 90% loved him, 10% didn't like him. This means that this is a significant minority of the population that did not go ahead and like Mordechai. Now granted, Baruch Hashem, it's great to have a majority, but at the end of the day, again, don't think for a second this is a 5%, 10%. This is a significant, what we call a miut hamatzui, a significant minority. So the Gemara says, what happened over here? Melamed sheper shomenu mitzvah Sanhedrin. I will say this is fascinating. Who are the people who really distanced themselves from Mordechai? Ultimately, again, it was the Sanhedrin. And I will say now, the incredible part of this is Mordechai was formerly a member of the Sanhedrin. So it's his former chevra, right? It's his former peers that distanced themselves from him. Rashi says, why did they distance? Shepir shomimenu lefi shebital midivrei Torah v'nichnas l'srara. They thought that he made a terrible mistake by ultimately leaving the Sanhedrin and leaving Jewish communal work and entering into the service of the king. They felt that was a betrayal or a shirking of his responsibilities to his people. So we'll say very dramatic. So here, what the Gemara is highlighting over here is, in the eyes of the common man, it could be they loved Mordechai. Who were the people who really distanced themselves? The members of the Sanhedrin, because they felt that he was making a tremendous mistake. You're needed in the community, not in the king's court. So the Gemara says, I'm Rabbi Yosef, what do you see from here? Gadol Talmud Torah Yotzer Me'atzalas Nafashos. You see from here that in a certain way, Talmud Torah is even greater than saving lives. Now we're going to qualify that statement. In the beginning, Mordechai is listed as number 4. Or I should say he's number 5. He's listed after 4 sages in the listing of sages. And later on, he's listed as number 6 after the 5th person. Asher Bom Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, Seraya, Ra'alya, Mordechai. Right, so again, right, Mordechai is listed after number 4. Right, Mordechai is listed number 5. Right, Mordechai, Belshon, Lubasov, Ksiv, Hevim, Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, Ezra, Ra'amya, Nachmani, then Mordechai, Belshon. Ultimately, he's listed as number 6. So you see that Mordechai's standing goes down. So we'll say, this statement of the Gemara is a very strong one, that Talmud Torah is even greater than Hatzalas Nefashos. So we'll say, what does that mean? So first of all, it can't be literal, right? Because Hatzalas Nefashos, saving lives is of paramount importance. So, but what the Gemara is highlighting over here is, at the end of the day, there's a cost-benefit analysis for everything. As well as I think about this just a moment. Who's right? Who is right? Mordechai or his colleagues? Who was right? Did Mordechai make the right move or not? We don't know. You have no idea. There's absolutely no idea. Could Mordechai have accomplished? I will say, things turn out a certain way. I don't know what Mordechai accomplished for the king or what he didn't accomplish for the king. I have no idea. Right? Did he save Jews from other edicts? Did he make the right choice? No, I will say, life is all about choices like this. Where you make a choice, obviously Mordechai thought this was the right choice. Otherwise he wouldn't have made it. Was he correct? Was he incorrect? This is the great question of life. We have to make choices all of the time. And those choices come with sacrifices. And did I make the right one? Did I not make the right one? That I find out after 120. All I could do is to make the best, well-informed decision I can. So it's interesting. It's clear that Mordechai's rabbinic colleagues thought he was dead wrong. They thought he was dead wrong. V'haraya, they're angry at him. They distance themselves from him. They feel like he's shirking his responsibilities. Mordechai obviously feels that his responsibilities lie elsewhere. And again, I just want to point out, it's incredible that this is how the Megillah closes. Because the Megillah, remember, is the story of the Jew in the diaspora. And this is our narrative. I'm faced with decisions all of the time. And the truth is, they both have merits. And which one do I choose and how do I know? Let's say, it's interesting, I get this question all of the time. When people come to discuss something, and they always ask, how do I know I'm making the right decision? And the simple answer is, you don't. You don't. This is the great challenge of life. And I don't mean in situations where one choice is wrong and one choice is right? Those are kind of obvious, right? The chazer's in one hand and the chopped liver's in the other. That's clear, right? But 99% of life is not like that. I often have 2 good options in front of me. I'm trying to choose the better one, and I legitimately don't know. That's the story of the Megillah. I could help the Jews in the court of the king, or I could go back to the Beis Medrash and help the Jews in the community. Which one do I do? Mordechai chooses the king. His compatriots feel wrong choice. Who's right? Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Amar Ravi Tema Rav Shmuel Bar Marta, Gadol Talmud Torah Yosef Binyan Beis HaMikdash. Listen to this. Learning Torah is even more important than the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Shekol Zman. Shebarach ben Neriah Kayim Lo Hinichu Ezra va'Allah. Well, it says this because as long as Baruch ben Neriah, who was Ezra's Rebbe, was alive, Ezra did not leave Bavel to go back to Eretz Yisrael to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. Only once Baruch ben Neriah dies does Ezra go back to go ahead and rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. Shabbos say, isn't that an incredible Gemara? We sit here every single morning and we learn Torah. And the truth is, yes, learning Torah is beautiful. Learning Torah is a mitzvah. It's an obligation. It's uplifting. But say, do we ever think that what we're doing now is even greater than than rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. And that's an unequivocal truth stated by Chazal, forever eternalized, Megillah Daf Zayin Amud Beis. The greatest thing, greater than building the Beis HaMikdash, is sitting and learning Torah. Absolutely incredible. Of course, by the way, I just want to point out, whenever you see Chazal making these statements like Torah is greater than saving lives, Torah is greater than rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash, you have to understand also what Chazal are trying to highlight over here is, when you learn, you better yourself and make yourself ready in life for these other tasks. If I build myself up through the learning of Torah, I'll be zocha to build the Beis HaMikdash. If I build myself up through learning Torah, I'll be zocha Me'eretz Hashem to save lives, to inspire others with ruchnius, to inspire others with spirituality. Torah is like the spiritual vitamins, right? It's the spiritual regimen every day that if I take it, I bolster myself spiritually and make myself into a better person, and then I can go out and impact the world in such dramatic ways. Amar Bar Yitzchak, Amar Bar Shmuel, Bar Marta. Gadol Talmud Torah Yoser Mikibod Avaim. This is an incredible one. Talmud Torah is even greater than honoring your parents. Honoring your parents. What does this mean? Shekol Osan Shalim Shaya Yaakov Vinu Bebeis Ever Lo Ne'anash. Because also remember again, the Gemara Chazal see a connection between the days that Yaakov was, or the years that Yaakov was away from his parents, and the years that Yosef was away from his parents. So interestingly enough, the Gemara says that Yaakov is only held accountable for the years that he spent in Lavan's home, and the years that he tarried, like in Sukkos, when he came back to Eretz Yisrael. But he's not held accountable for the 14 years that he spent learning in the yeshiva of Shem and Ever on the way to the house of Lavan. Damar Mar, Bosai Taf of Yud Zayin, Lamanim Nushnos of Shal Yishmael. Why does the Torah go out of its way to reckon the years of Yishmael? In other words, why do we care about how long Yishmael lived? After all, again, Rashi says he's a Rasha. Because it's through the years of Yishmael that we could see actually the lifespan or the timeline of Yaakov Avinu's life. Yishmael lived until 137. How much younger was Yishmael? How much older was Yishmael than Yitzchak? Arbei Sarshnin. Yishmael was 14 years older than Yitzchak. Tichsev, the Avraham ben Shmonim Shana v'Sheish Shana b'Ledes Hagar. Avram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Yishmael. Right? Tichsev, the Avraham ben Mea Shana b'Hivali Loes Yitzchak beno. And we know that Avram Avinu was 100 years old when Sari Menu gives birth to Yitzchak. So 14-year difference between Yishmael and Yitzchak. Uksiv, the Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana Baladas Osam. Yitzchak was 60 years old when he had children. Yaakov and Esav Bar Kama Havi Yishmael Kishes Yalad Yaakov. So how old was Yishmael when Yaakov Avinu was born? Bar Shim ve'Arba. Ultimately, again, he was 74 years old. Shabbos says he was 74 years old when Yaakov Avinu was born. Kama Paishon Mishnei. So how many years ultimately again are left in his lifespan? Shisin Utla, 63 years, right? Because this is 137, 63 years. So watch this. Vitana, Haya Yaakov Avinu B'Shashanis Barich Mi Aviv Ben Shishim V'Shaloshana. Yaakov Avinu was 63 years old when he got the bracha from his father. Uba B'Perek Meis Yishmael. And in that time, Yishmael died. The Chsiv, Vayar Esav ki barech ze Esav saw Vayar Esav ki beirach Yitzchak es Yaakov Vayelech Esav el Yishmael Vayikach es machalas bas Yishmael achos nevayos. So the pasuk tells us that when Yaakov got his bracha, Esav saw again that Yaakov had blessed that Yitzchak had blessed Yaakov. So Esav goes to Yishmael and he marries Machalas, the daughter of Yishmael, the sister of Nevayos. Now, if you're telling me that she's the daughter of Yishmael, I know that she's the sister of Nevayos. Why do you have to tell me that? Shabbos said, because it comes to teach me that what? Although Yishmael agreed to the shidduch, Yishmael died before Machalas got married, and her brother Nevayos is the one who actually married her off, which tells us again that at this point in time, Yishmael dies when Yaakov Avinu is 63 years old. Va'arbeisar Ad demisyaled Yosef. Now remember again, it's another 14 years until Yosef is born, right? Another 14 years. So you remember, so therefore, Yaakov Avinu is 63 years old when he leaves his parents' home. 14 years until Yosef is born. Ha shivim v'sheva. That would put Yaakov at 77 years old. Uksiv v'Yosef ben shloshim shana ba'amdo lifnei Paro. And then the pasuk says Yosef was 30 years old when he was brought before Paro. Remember again, this was to interpret the dreams. Ha mea v'shev. So ultimately, again, that would put Yaakov at 107 years. So the Gemara says, ha mea v'sheva v'shev. Right? That ultimately again would put it at, right, that's correct, at 107 years. So the Gemara says, shev de siv'a v'tarti de kafna. You then have the 7 years of plenty, the 2 years of famine, ha mea v'shissar. That would put Yaakov Avinu at 116 years old. Uksiv, Vayomer Paro al Yaakov kama yimei shnei chayecha. So Paro asks Yaakov, how old are you? This is when Yaakov first comes down to Egypt. Vayomer Yaakov el Paro yimei shnei migurai shloshim uma'ashana. I am 130 years old. So we'll say, what are we missing? 14 years. In other words, we just did all the calculations. And based on all the calculations, Yaakov Avinu should be 116 years old. Yet the Torah is telling us, he tells Paro, I'm 130 years old. So the Gemara says, but he's really only, we just did all the math. He's really only 116 years old. So where's the missing 14 years? Watch this. Well, so we're not taking into account what's the missing 14 years? The missing 14 years are the years spent in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. Let's say it's really incredible. We have literally a 14-year block unaccounted for in the lifetime of Yaakov Avinu. Where did that 14 years spent? In the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. That when Yaakov Avinu is on his way to the house of Lavan, he recognizes that he is going to be living in a spiritually hostile environment for a prolonged period of time. He bolsters himself spiritually by remaining again 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. So the Gemara says, "Desanya Yahaya Yaakov beis Aver mutman arba esrei shana." Yaakov Avinu literally was mutman. Mutman means hidden. It's not that he's hiding from anyone; it's that he's hiding himself. He has a fully immersive spiritual experience for 14 years. So the Gemara says, "Arba esrei shana." Aver meis. Yaakov Avinu leaves after 14 years. 2 years after he left, Aver died. Yatsa misham ubal aram naharaim. So ultimately, again, therefore Yaakov Avinu left the yeshiva, goes to Aram Naharaim to Lavan. Nimtza kisha amad ala be'er shivim v'sheva shana. So we'll say in reality, it turns out that he was really already 77 years old, which makes sense. He was 63 when he left his father's house. 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, 77 by the time he gets to Aram Naharaim. So the Gemara says, Ominala Doloma Anish. So how do you know that Yaakov Avinu was not held accountable for the 14 years that he remained in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver? So when we talk about accountability, remember again that accountability it's interesting that there is a level of accountability that Yaakov Avinu has for not honoring his parents during the years he was away. But it's clear that the 14 years he spent in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver is not part of that tally. Disanya, Nimtze Yosef Shepiresh me Aviv Esrem Ushtayim Shana, Keshem Shepiresh Yaakov Avinu me Aviv Diakov Tlasin, Piresh Yaakov, Keshem Shepiresh Yaakov Avinu me Aviv. So we'll say, listen to this. So because you see Chazal equate the 22 years that Yosef is, quote-unquote, away from his father to the 22 years that Yaakov was away from his father. So the Gemara says, but one second, Yaakov is not away for 22 years. How long is Yaakov been away for? Yaakov tlasen v'shisa havyon. But say, how long is Yaakov away from his father for? How long? 36 years, not 22 years. It's 22 years, Rabbi say, in the house of Lavan. But I want to point out, just the 22 years are not just the house of Lavan. The 22 years of the house of Lavan, the traveling back to Eretz Yisrael, and remember again the close to 2 years in Sukkos. Right? This is also very important. The close to 2 years, I should say, from traveling back and in Sukkos. That's the 22 years in total. But I will say, but it's not 22 years, it's 36 years. He spent 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. So what do you see? Ella, our beisar, the have a base Aver, lo chashav lahu. Ultimately, again, the 14 years that he spent in yeshiva, that's not counted as part of the tally. So both said this is really incredible. So it turns out that Yaakov Avinu was really away from his family for 36 years. 36 years. 22 years Lavan and traveling back, 14 years yeshiva of Shem and Aver. You see a strong connection that Chazal make between the time that Yaakov was away from his family and Yosef was away from his family. They connect the two, but Yosef is only 22, Yaakov's 36. You see from here that Chazal backed out the 14 years of Yaakov Avinu's time in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, which gives rise to the rabbinic adage that we saw on the bottom of Amud Beis, which is Gadol Talmud Torah Yoser Mikibud Avaim. That learning Torah is even greater than honoring one's parents, because Yaakov Avinu again is not held liable for failure to honor his parents during the years that he was learning in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver, which I both say is really quite fascinating, because you see from the eyes of Chazal, they feel Yaakov Avinu spent too much time by Lavan. He spent too much time by Lavan. He should have gone there, gotten married, got out. Remember again, the whole 7-year thing also is Yaakov Avinu's idea. Right? So he should have gone there, married, and come home. Right? Somehow Chazal hold him accountable for that. So the Gemara says, Ella mishum deishtai ba'archa tartin shnin. I'm sorry. Sof the base Lavan esrin shnin hadin. But 1 second, I'm about to say, if you do the math, Yaakov Avinu is only at the house of Lavan for 20 years, not 22 years. You're right. Ella mishum deishtai ba'archa tartin shnin. You're right. Boss is what I just mentioned before. He spent 2 years traveling home. I will say it is not a 2-year journey from Aram Naharaim to Canaan. Not at all. Not at all. He spent 2 years getting home. So the Gemara said, "Desanya Yotza me'Aram Naharaim balo l'Sukkos va'asa sham shmona asar chodesh." I will say he spent, and this is really incredible, he spent 18 months in Sukkos. Shnei Amar v'Yaakov nasa Sukkosa v'yivan lo bayis u'lemikneos asukos u'bebeisel asa shisha chadashim. 18 months in Sukkos, 6 months in Beit El, ultimately again 2 years. Shabbos said, this is incredible. Yaakov Avinu actually spent 2 years in Eretz Yisrael before coming home. Shabbos said, that's a whole Torah by itself. Like, why? So again, Pasha Pshat, by the way, could be why. Remember, he's trying to throw Esav off his trail. Because remember, again, Esav wanted Yaakov to travel back to Edom with him. Yaakov says, I can't, we travel so slowly. Could be that on a Pashat level, Yaakov was scared Esav was going to leave spies. So if he just rushed back home, it would show that he lied. So therefore, again, he kind of took his time getting home. But the truth is, there's a lot of complexities in the relationship as well that the Mefarshim bring up. But in any event, we'll say we see that Chazal, this supports Chazal's idea, Gadol Talmud Torah Yoser Mikibud Avaim. But I will say, ultimately, again, that sometimes the way to read these passages is Gadol Talmud Torah. Greatest Talmud Torah. Why? Because Yoser, you can give more to any other endeavor once you are bolstered and girded with the power of Torah. So Gadol Talmud Torah. Why? Yoser, you could give more to Atzalas Nefashos, to helping others. Gadol Talmud Torah. Yoser Mibinya Beis HaMikdash. Greatest Torah is why? Yoser, because you could give more. You could contribute more in Miras Hashem to the future rebuilding. You could do more to facilitate the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. Gadol Talmud Torah. Talmud Torah is great. Why? Yoser, I could give more to honoring my parents. The power of Torah is that it makes us better people. And by becoming better people, we do everything better. I say, quote unquote, save, contribute to others better. I honor my parents better. And I do what I need to do in Miras Hashem to hasten the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash better as well. Hadron Alach Megillah Nikei Mazel Tov. Now, don't be sad. Don't be sad, right? It was a beautiful parak. There's so much more beautiful Agarata still ahead of us. We're going to have a little Gemara first, but in Meretz Hashem, beautiful Agarata lessons as well. Says the Mishnah. If a person reads the Megillah out of order, one is not Yotzei. Lo Yotzei. Kara Alpeh. Similarly, if a person read the Megillah Baal Peh, in other words, not from the scroll, right? Or Kara Targum B'chol Lashon, or Rabbi say you read the Megillah in another language, lo yatsa, you are not yotze. Aval, korin osa l'lo azos balad. So Rabbi say, so now we could, however, you could read, or as Rabbi say, you could write the Megillah in a foreign language and read it in that language, as long as what? As long as what? You speak that language, right? So in other words, if I wanted to write a Megillah in English, I could write a Megillah, we'll discuss, write a Megillah in English and read it in English, and that would be fine. What you can't do is read a Megillah in a foreign language and not understand it and be yotze. That's what it means when it says, Targum b'chol lashon lo yatsa, right? If you went and you wrote a Targum Aramaic or b'chol lashon lo yatsa, you're not yotze. That's referring to the fact, if you write it in another language and you don't speak that language, you're not yotze. Aval kornos olos belaz. But you can go ahead and read the Megillah in a different language, if that's your language. V'alois sheshama ashuris. Rabbi say anyone who hears the Megillah in Ashuris. Remember again, Ashuris means Hebrew, right? Hebrew. If you hear the Megillah in Hebrew, even if what you're yotze, Rabbi say yotze, even if what? Even if you don't understand it. Kara Serigin. So I'll say we'll define this case in the Gemara. Serigin means you read it in parts. We're going to see what it really means is you read, pause, read, pause. But the pauses are significant. That's Kara Serigin. Umisnamne. Misnamne means you read the Megillah while you're dozing. Yatsa. You're yotze. Hayakosva darsha umagia. So we'll say, let's say you were writing, or learning, or fixing a Megillah. Im kivin libo yatsa. If you had kavana, and I will say, so now let's say while you're going ahead and writing the Megillah, fixing the Megillah, learning the Megillah, you're reading it also. So can you be yotze mikra Megillah like that? So the Mishnah says, yeah. Im kivin libo, if you have kavana to fulfill the mitzvah, then it works. Ve'im lav, and if not, you're not yotze. And I will say, we'll have to define the parameters of that case. What does that mean? You're writing a Megillah. Literally, again, I'm writing a brand new Megillah and I'm reading it as I'm writing. So we'll discuss what that means. But by Pashas, the Mishnah is saying over here is, if you're occupied in another activity, I will say, let's say I'm learning the Megillah. But it happens when I'm learning the Megillah, I'm reading it out loud, and it also happens to be what? Purim night. Right? Happens to be Purim. So I could be yotze with that reading of the Megillah, even though I'm primarily occupied in a different activity, i.e. the learning of the Megillah. As long as I have kavana to be yotze the mitzvah, I'm yotze. Haisek suva besam ubesikra ubekumus ubekan konsum ala diar vala niftra lo yotze. So we'll say, we'll discuss sam, sikra, kumus, kan konsum are all different types of ink, but they're non-enduring inks. Similarly, again, if you're at al niyar diftera, which is inferior type, niyar is paper, diftera is unprocessed parchment, lo yatsa, you're not yotze. Ad shetehei ksuva ashuris ala sefer bidio. Right, so remember again, the Megillah has to be written in ashuris, which means again, Hebrew, with specific ashuris script on what we call sefer, which is what we call processed parchment, and with dio, a special kind of black ink, which remains. Again, we'll define all of this in the Gemara. So we'll say, so the Gemara is intrigued by this idea of Hakari Sa Megillah Mafrei. You're not allowed to read the Megillah out of order. Okay, how do you know this? The pasuk says, like it's written and like its times. Mazmanam Mafrei. I will say, just like Zman, time cannot be experienced out of order. Af kisavam lemafreya lo. So too the way it's written can be written out of order as well. To which the Gemara says, that's fine, but midei kriya ksiva, we're not talking about how it's written, we're talking about what? How it's read. So kisavam tells me it can't be written out of order, that's fine. I'm trying to figure out, how do you know that you can't read it out of order? To which the Gemara says, midei kriya ksiva, hacha siya ksiva, dichsiv, lios osim es shnei hayamim, ela mehacha, dichsiv, these days shall be remembered and performed. Iskish zechira la'asiya. We are comparing remembering to performing, or I should say celebrating. That's really what it means. It says performing. So ma'asiya l'mafreya. We'll say just like the celebration of days cannot be done out of order, right? The 14th always comes before the 15th. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry, ma'asiya l'mafreya av zechira l'mafreya. So to the remembrance. So we'll say, how do you remember Purim? Reading of the Megillah. So just as the asiyah, the celebration, is quote unquote done in order, can't do it out of order, so too the remembrance, right, which is the reading of the Megillah, cannot be done out of order as well. So we'll say that teaches me that halacha l'maisa, you cannot read the Megillah out of order. Okay, so we'll say now, beautiful Gemara. Listen to this. Tana, v'chein b'halal, v'chein b'kriyas shema, u'b'tfilah. This doesn't just apply in Hallel. It's just apply by Megillah. You also can't read Hallel out of order. You also can't recite Kriyas Shema, which is this Mishnah Yomi. Can't recite Kriyas Shema out of order, and you can't daven Shmona Esrei out of order as well. So we'll say now the Gemara is going to go through each of these. Hallel minalan. How do you know that you cannot recite Hallel out of order? So the Gemara says, Rabba Amar Dichsiv b'mizrach shemesh ad mevo'o. Right? Literally, again, from the east, the sun goes through its trajectory. So we'll say, so what does that teach us? Rashi says, Kishim sheshkias uzriyas hacham alo yahapchu, kach mehulal shem Hashem. So we'll say the same way that the sun always follows its charted course, so too mehulal shem Hashem. When reciting Hallel, you have to go through the normal order, the normal charted course as well. Can't read Hallel out of order. Rav Yosef says, Zeh hayom asa Hashem. This is the day Hashem, right? Nagila v'nis mechabol. This is the day Hashem set aside for celebration. Shavuos, which teaches me what? Just like the day, right, has an order, right? The hours of the day progress in an order. So too the praise of Hallel must be recited in its order as well. Rav Avya Amar, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevorach. The name of Hashem should be blessed. We'll say this is Yehi. Yehi always b'havyaso Yehi. Should be in a certain order. This is the order for the praising of Hashem, and the order should not be disrupted. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Mehacha Me'ata V'ad Olam. From now and for eternity. Just like from now and for eternity, we'll say it's a linear progression. It's an order. You can't upset the order. So too, again, the order for the recitation of Hallel should not be changed as well. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Kriyas Shema. So now we've established Megillah has to be recited in order. Hallel has to be recited in order. What about Kriyas Shema? This is fascinating. Kriyas Shema, the Sanya, Kriyas Shema, Kichsavat, Divrei Rebbe. So we'll say, Rebbe says that Allah Chalamaysa, Kriyas Shema could only be recited in Lashon HaKodesh. You could only recite Kriyas Shema in Hebrew. You cannot recite Kriyas Shema in any other language. V'cham say no, b'chal Lashon. Not true. You could recite Shema in any language you want, provided that what? You understand the particular language. In any language you want. So the Gemara says, my time with the Rebbe, what's Rebbe's logic? Right? What's Rebbe's logic? Why does Rebbe allow for the recitation of why does Rebbe say Kriyas Shema can only be recited in Lashon HaKodesh? Because he says on the base, V'hayu bav yasanyu. Rebbe will say, because Rebbe says, look, the pasuk in Shema says, V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela. These things shall be. V'hayu, Rebbe will say, means, according to Rebbe, that things must be preserved in their original state. And since the original state of Shema is what? Lashon HaKodesh. Therefore, Shema can only be recited in Lashon HaKodesh. V'Rabbanan. So we'll say that's the position of Rebbe. Rebbe, Shema can only be recited in Lashon HaKodesh. V'hayu. V'Rabbanan, my taima. So why did the Rabbanan say that Allah Chalamayis you could say Shema in any language you want? Amar Kra Shema. Because the pasuk says Shema, hear, or listen. B'chal Lashon Sha'ata Shameya. You can say it in any language that you are capable of hearing. So in other words, as long as you can hear the language, as long as you understand what it is that you're saying, you're good to go. The Rebbe nami haksiv Shema. What does Rebbe do with the word Shema? We'll say Rebbe uses that word Shema to teach you that what? Make sure you hear that which you are saying. Right? We learn this in Mishnah Yom. Right, so again, make sure you articulate a level of audibility. So make sure you hear that which you are saying. The Rabbanan hold Kiman Amar Hakori Eshma Velo Eshmiel Laazno Yatsa. The Rabbanan, on the other hand, hold that halacha lamaisa, someone who goes ahead and reads Shema and does not hear what they are saying is Yotzei. Okay, so the Rabbanan don't need that drasha. So the Gemara says, Rabbanan nami haksiv v'hayu. What do the Rabbanan do with the word v'hayu? So the Gemara says, Hahumi baile shelo yikra lemafreya. So v'hayu teaches me ultimately again that Kriyas Shema cannot be read out of order. Right? The order must be preserved. The Rebbe shelo yikra lemafreya minale. Where does Rebbe learn out that Kriyas Shema cannot be recited out of order? Meidvarim hadvarim. The pasuk could have said dvarim, but instead it says v'hayu hadvarim. These words. So Rebbe understands hadvarim teaches me that what? These words must be maintained in their particular order. V'Rabbanan, Dvarim hadvarim lamashmalahu. Both say the Rabbanan, they don't really darshan Dvarim hadvarim. Beautiful. So both say, I just want to point out, even though you have Machlokes Rabbi and the Rabbanan, both of them are what? Are agreeing that Kriyat Shema cannot be read lemafreya, cannot be read out of order. The Rabbanan say they have two different drashas, right? So one is Vahayu, Vadyasam Biyu, they should be in their order, or Hadivarim. But ultimately, again, both are agreeing that it cannot be read lemafreya. But say, so the Gemara goes on a bit of a tangent over here. Leima Kasava Rebbe, Kala Torah Kula B'Chalashan Emra. The Rabbanan say it must be that Rebbe holds that the rest of the Torah can be recited in any other language, because remember again, what did Rebbe say? Rebbe said that halacha l'maisa, the drasha of, Rebbe says, Kriyat Shema kichsava, right? That ultimately, again, Vahayu teaches me that Kriyat Shema must be read in Lashon HaKodesh. The fact that Rebbe needs this drasha for Shema tells me that what? That he holds that the rest of the Torah can be read in any language you want. How so? So the Gemara says, because if Rebbe felt that the entire Torah had to be read in Lashon HaKodesh, why would you need a special drasha by Shema? The fact that you need a special drasha by Shema to tell you that Shema has to be read by Lashon HaKodesh tells me that what? That according to Rebbe, the rest of the Torah could be read how? How? In any language you want. To which the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. It's derech. I'll tell you why. Shema kirabanan. I might have thought that Shema means like the Rabbanan say. What does Shema mean? Hear in any language that you could hear, and therefore there's a special dispensation that you could read Shema in any language. So therefore again, Chasav Rahmana Vahayu. Therefore again, the Torah says Vahayu to make sure that no, even Shema, like the rest of the Torah, has to be recited by Lashon HaKodesh. Okay? It must be that according to the Rabbanan, they hold that the rest of the Torah must be read in Lashon HaKodesh. How so? Because if according to the Rabbanan you think that the entire Torah can be said in any language, why would you need a special dispensation by Shema to read it in any language? If the entire Torah could be said in any language, I'll tell you why. You might have thought ultimately again, like the drasha Vahayu by Rebbe. Remember again, Rebbe darshans Vahayu to teaching that what? Bavyasan Yuhu. They have to be Lashon HaKodesh. Therefore, Kasav Rahmana Shema. Therefore, the Torah says Shema, that you could hear it in any Lashon. Therefore, both say, what comes out of it is as follows. We try to take the Machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanan by Shema and globalize it as a Machlokes, as to how you're supposed to read the entire Torah. Kamash Malan, you can't infer from this anything. Here's what I know. I know there's Machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanan about Shema. Rebbe holds Shema has to be recited in Lashon HaKodesh. The Rabbanan say any language you want. I know that the reason this is being brought down here is why? Because even the Rebbe and the Rabbanan disagree about Shema. What do they agree on? Shema cannot be recited l'mafreya. Shema cannot be recited out of order. We just saw in Mishnah Yomi yesterday that how do we paskin? Shema can't be recited l'mafreya in terms of what? You can't mix up the psukim. If you did end up mixing up the paragraphs, you're still yahrzeit. Even though we saw in yesterday's Mishnah that ultimately, again, the paragraphs have a specific order, right? Shema and V'yahavta relationship comes before V'haya'im Shamoa mitzvos, which comes before V'yomer Parashas Tzitzis, because Tzitzis only applies by night and not by day. V'hayim Shamoa talks about mitzvos that apply all the time. Seeing that there's a specific ordering of the parashos, if you said the parashos out of order, you're still yahrzeit. If you start mixing up psukim within those paragraphs, that's when you're not yahrzeit. Incredible. Both say, what about tefillah? Both say, what a beautiful Gemara. Tefilos. Remember again, going down the order. You can't say Shemona Esrei out of order. So both say, now watch this. Tefillah minalan. How do you know about tefillah? So watch this. Visanya. Shimon HaPakuli. His dear Shemona Esrei brachos. Lifnei Rabbi Gamliel ala Seder B'Yam. I will say, listen to this. Shimon HaPakuli. We'll say, what does Pakuli mean? Look at Rashi. Pakuli yesh omrim shemistaker b'tzemer gefen. Pakuli means he was a cotton merchant. So we'll say, Shimon Pakuli organized Shemona Esrei. So we'll say, I just want to point something out, how incredible this is. A cotton merchant is the one who organized Shemona Esrei. So we'll say, so sometimes we think in life that there's a choice. Either I become an outstanding Talmud Chacham, or I have a day job. Right? You can't do both. Shimon HaPakuli kind of blows that theory out of the water. As does Rabbi Yochanan HaSandler, as do many of our great Tanamim Amoran, who had day jobs. I will say, do not think for a second that these people had the luxury of just sitting and learning all the time. They had jobs. And with their jobs, they found the ability to become excellent Torah. So I will say, people often talk about, I'm a balabas. And kind of like the explanation of what's a balabas, really what I do is I work. I kind of dabble in Torah a little bit here and there, right? But there's an acceptance that as a balabas, I can have a certain level of learning mediocrity, spiritual mediocrity. I take off here, I take off there, I do this, I do that. I say, it's not true. A person might be a balabas because I have to work. We all have to work, right? We all have to work. Being a balabas doesn't mean that I don't have to be a mitsuyon in my ruchnius, right? It doesn't mean that I don't have an obligation to be on with my learning every single day. There's no vacations from learning. There's vacation from your job. There's no vacation from learning. There's no vacation from my ruchnius. There's no, I take it easy on this day, I relax a little bit more on this day. That's not what it means to be a balabas. Being a balabas is the crown accomplishment of a Jew. Because you know what it means to be a balabas? It means I can live in two worlds and find a way to be successful in both of them. I can be a captain of my industry, hopefully, Meretz Hashem, encounter incredible material success, and I am no less successful in the base medrash. No less successful. Being a balabas doesn't mean I'm good over here and okay over here. Being a balabas means I find the koach in myself to be excellent in every single area and arena of life. Shimon HaPakuli, Shimon the cotton merchant, is the one who arranged Shmona Esrei. So we'll say such an incredible yisod. What did he do? So he did this before Rabbi Gamliel, Allah Seder B'Yavne. So watch this. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Varnei Masni Satana, Meh Ve'esrim Zkin, Bohem Kamanavim, Tiknu Shmona Esrei Brachos Allah Seder. So we'll say it's an alternate version of this. 120 elders, and amongst them, prophets arranged the order of Shmona Esrei. So we'll say, Satan Rabbana. So now, here we go. So we'll say, it's actually interesting to kind of try to understand how do you go ahead and reconcile. Because again, you have a brisa that says, Shimon HaPakuli is the one who organized Shmona Esrei. Then you have 120 elders, amongst them prophets who organized the Shmona Esrei. The Pashtos, the easiest way to reconcile all of this is, it's a collaborative effort. There were many people involved in the creation and ultimately organization of Shmona Esrei. So the Gemara says, Tana Abanim Inaisha Omrim Avos. How do you know that? We say the Avos says, now we're going to go through the entire order of Shmona Esrei. So how do you know that you say the bracha of Avos? Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. How do you know that we do that? Shne'emar Havu LaHashem B'nei Elim. Because well said, the pasuk says, give thanks to Hashem. B'nei Elim, the sons of the great ones. The Elim, the mighty ones, are the Avos. That's how we know that we start. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Menayim she'omrim gevuros, ato gibor. Li'olam Hashem. How do you know that you speak out the strength of Hashem? Havu LaHashem, kavod va'oz. Right? Give to Hashem kavod, right? Little honor and strength. When I show him Kiddusha, it's how you know that you say Kiddusha, Ata Kadosh, Shne'emar, Havu LaHashem, kavod shemo, hishtachavu LaHashem, Bahadras Kodesh. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up with this is a great Gemara, incredible Gemara. We'll pick up at Meretz Hashem with the order of Shmona Esrei, Meretz Hashem tomorrow, and we'll say we're going to see why we say certain brachos, and we'll talk about the order of those brachos as well. Shkayach, everyone. Sorry? 100%. Instructions? Thank you.